parents. And I just want to say our thoughts and prayers are with all of the victims and their families. On that note, we welcome in our friend Michael Wilbon, who's done an excellent job conducting himself with grace, as always, over the last 24 hours covering this. Michael, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Molly.
Michael, you told a couple stories I heard late last night, one specifically about a health issue that you were dealing with. Can you explain how personal this tragedy is for you and how Kobe touched your own life?
Yeah, well, obviously, as a sports writer, going back to far beyond when Kobe was a senior in high school and many of us outside the greater Philly area became aware of him. There's the basketball side of this, and there's a much more personal side for a lot of us. And I've been listening to Stephen A. and Max talk about this, and I know how close he and Stephen A. were. For me, 12 years ago this week, I had a heart attack to start Super Bowl week, not exactly where you want to start it. I was out in Arizona, and I got out of the hospital after about 4 days, and I got home, and at the front door were flowers, a huge bouquet, and one of them the card said from Kobe Bryant. And I thought, okay, this is a joke, a lighthearted one, and who sent these? It must have been Kornheiser or somebody in the fraternity. And I called the Lakers. I called John Black, who you guys know for a long time. And I said, John, these aren't from Kobe, are they? He goes, well, he called to get your address. So yes, they are. And the first thing I did after I got out, I was able to go down. The Lakers were in town in Phoenix playing the Suns. And I went down to the arena, and Phil and Jeannie Buss had sent something as well. I just wanted to thank people in person since the Lakers were in town. And Kobe called me in the trainer's room. And I was read the riot act. And so I got the first smile I've had in the last 24 hours. And I listened to the clip of Stephen. They talk about the Mamba mentality was not reserved for only NBA players or basketball players. No, I mean, the Mamba mentality was a certain toughness that you were expected to do certain things. And I was 2 months away from my son, my only child, being born at the time. He turns 12 soon. And Kobe read me the riot act he said, you've waited all this time. We talked about fatherhood and parenthood. What are you doing? You got to be better than this. And there was a riot act that lasted probably about 8 to 10 minutes. It talked about, we talked about from then on, particularly the last half of his career, we talked about a lot of things that were not basketball related. And it included a lot of talk about fatherhood, a lot of talk about health. There's a picture also that I posted on Instagram of Kobe talking to my son on the baseline at the Wizards arena before his last game in Washington. And it's those memories that I have right now. Those are the first things. And as I've said, God knows I had a courtside seat. I had a front row seat to his entire career, all the big games, the games that led up to the big games. I loved being at the Olympics when an international competition, when Kobe would speak to international players in their native tongues. And I think, I think of the intellect, the depth of it, the breadth, the curiosity. And it's those things that I really have dwelled on in the past 24 hours. And I'm fortunate to have had accompany that front row seat, a pass that sort of gets you backstage, if you will, and you get to know people very early on in their careers, 18, 19 years old with Kobe. It's extraordinary how long he had lived his life in the public eye like that. And so for me, I haven't even had a chance since we've been working like we have to. I don't know if Stephen A's done this or if Max has done this. I haven't had a chance to talk to my son who's in that picture. And, Kobe Bryant, he was only 8 or 9 years old, and he's much more a child of the LeBron and Steph Curry generation. But for him, Kobe Bryant, one of the first athletes he interacted with. When my son said he didn't understand why he had to go to school because he was going to the NBA, that comment got to Kobe Bryant, and he rolled his eyes. And I said, you helped cause this. And he sort of laughed, and he disappeared with my son down a little corridor after an interview. I don't know what was said during that conversation. I wasn't allowed to be told by Matthew, and Kobe didn't tell me, but I suspect I know. And so it's all of those things. That's the rush. That's the flood of memories that cover me last night and today, and I'm sure beyond that.
I remember when the great Isaiah Thomas once said to me, if you noticed one common denominator when it comes to particularly Hall of Famers, regardless of the sport, one of the things they religiously do is they apologize to their family members and loved ones because of all the sacrifices that they make in pursuit of that aspiration, that championship, those kind of lofty goals. It's individualized in such a manner that there is a bunker mentality. And for somebody like Mike Wilbon, one of the great, great columnists this nation has ever seen, through all of these years writing for the Washington Post, knowing all of these athletes, Mike can speak to this even better than me. One of the greatest things about what we do is having access to those individuals who let you inside, because they don't let everybody inside. And as much of a bunker mentality as athletes can adopt, and as much as they can shield themselves away from the public, Kobe took it to another level. He was incredibly private. He was incredibly protective of himself. He wasn't the most trusting person in the world. So when you got a phone call from him, and Wilbon could speak to this, when you got a phone call from Kobe, it meant something, because he didn't call everybody. He didn't talk to everybody. And even when he did, there was very little that he revealed. He was always in control in that regard. And as the years waned, not just in his playing career, but then beyond, and he ventured into a new life beyond basketball, and he opened up, and Bill Plaschke alluded to that in his column today in the Los Angeles Times, how Kobe seemed to open up a little bit more. The kind of things that he would say, the things, it wasn't about basketball. He would talk to you about life. And even though he's younger than Wilbon and he's younger than me and what have you, he would get on us about the things that we needed to do to make ourselves better. Mike Wilbon, in terms of your health, me, and, you know, for some reason he found out that I had a high cholesterol level, and he was getting on me about that over the last 2 or 3
Where do
weeks
you
or
think
so.
that wisdom came from, Stephen A? That he was so wise beyond his years.
He was exactly. He was just brilliant. I mean, I got to give credit to his parents. I have to give parents to your upbringing. When you have that level of intellect and you have an insatiable appetite to maximize it to the best of your ability, the way that he did, he'd be the first to tell you it's not just about you, it's about people who helped you along the way. And that was who Kobe Bryant was. I mean, he was getting on me. He was getting on Mike Wilbon over the years. The list goes on and on. Players, and I'll end it by saying this, Max. Kobe Bryant was once asked a question. A lawyer reminded me of that this morning. Kobe Bryant, a friend of ours, both myself and Wilbon, David Cornwell, I believe, he reminded us of this. Kobe Bryant was once asked a question about whether or not he had a problem with people that lacked a work ethic. He said, no, not at all. I have a problem with people who lack a work ethic but expect to be great. That's my problem.
Yeah.
It's not about your work ethic. It's about the fact that you have the audacity, the unmitigated gall to expect greatness associated with you when you know good and damn well you are not willing to put in the work. That is not something in his 41 years on this earth that anyone would ever accuse Kobe Bryant of, an individual who didn't and was not willing to put in the work. The one thing you could bet the house on is that he was always willing to put in the work and to make the necessary sacrifices to be great at whatever he elected to do.
Mentioned earlier, I found out about this bringing my eldest daughter, Esther, to basketball practice. It's where I found out that this happened. And Kobe was taking his daughter, who I used to tell him about Esther, and he would talk about Gianna a lot, her competitiveness. When I was in LA for 6 years, we communicated a bunch. And, the first thought you have is, how can they even have basketball practice? Felt like basketball shouldn't be played that day. And of course, everyone eventually quickly comes to the conclusion, well, what would Kobe want to do? And it was the best thing. It was the best escape from it and the kind of best honoring of him, I felt. You see your daughter almost make a layup in a game and that feeling of exhilaration because she's applying what she just learned and worked hard for. whatever her natural capacity is, I think Kobe showed that whatever your capacity is, you give it your best, you play with passion, and you apply yourself. There's a, I was trying to make sense of it during the practice because that's where I found out what the hell just happened. I thought when I first heard it that the news was going to be, hey, did you hear the news about Kobe, that he bought the Lakers? Because I always thought he was going to wind up owning the Lakers. And I thought of an old Yiddish proverb called, it says, der Mensch tracht und Gott lacht. That means man thinks, it really means plans, and God laughs. And I thought of Kobe, like he, man plans and God laughs. Yeah. And the tragic sense that, wait, this was not supposed to be like this in this world. Maybe in some other dimension, but not in this world. This was not how it was supposed to be fated for Kobe Bryant. And it happened, and there's a lot to kind of try to integrate. And I know, by the way, it could feel that, especially on a sports show, well, in the sports world, people are sure taking this personally and making this about something larger than just the sport they're narrowly focusing on. Well, of course. And that's the kind of impact that Kobe Bryant had on those who followed him. And I think that we were discussing this earlier. The reason for that is, particularly, Molly, in your age range, is he came into the league as a teenager, champing at the bit. And when you see that in your own life, you can relate to that. Like, he's being held back. He really was being held back. He's kept on the bench. His minutes were being held back. But he had this belief in himself that he was going to be great. And people can live vicariously through that character. Because maybe in your own life, you're actually finger pointing and making excuses. And maybe you're holding yourself back, or no one really is. But Kobe was an example of someone who literally was actually being held back. And when they took the handcuffs off and he was able to express himself because he had the passion, and not only the innate capacity, but also the passion that he channeled to work and perfecting his craft. When the handcuffs were taken off, we saw greatness. We saw self-expression. We saw the fulfillment of his kind of his self-proclamation as, a future great. And there was something so satisfying about going along with him on that ride that I think his passing, particularly because it happens in an unexpected way and at an early age, just affects. I can't think of a parallel to this in the history of sports.
There's a deep connection, and he inspires all of us, even laymen's like ourselves. Michael, I want to talk to you about what he wants to do and wanted to do in his second act. We talked about his daughter, Gigi, and get more into that, but we have to take a quick commercial break. If you can stick around. Wait a